It was a crisp, tense February afternoon in Washington, D.C. The White House had prepared for a historic meeting, one that had the potential to shape the future of global politics. The U.S. President, Donald Trump, had invited Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy for a face-to-face discussion. Their nations had been close allies for years, bound together by the shared goal of ensuring Ukraine's sovereignty in the face of Russian aggression. But what began as a diplomatic exchange quickly descended into an unexpected confrontation that no one saw coming. The air in the Oval Office was thick with anticipation. Trump's aides were buzzing with last-minute preparations, but the president's demeanor was unwavering, focused. He had made his decision. Today would be a defining moment in U.S. Ukraine relations. Zelenskyy, on the other hand, entered the room with his usual confidence, a little wearied from the months of pressure, but determined to protect his country's interests. As they exchanged pleasantries, the discussion quickly turned to a deal on Ukraine's rare earth minerals. Trump, with his characteristic bluntness, had already laid out the terms. "I'm offering a partnership," Trump said. "We'll help you, but we want something in return. The U.S. wants a stake in your resources. This is the future of our energy independence. It's time Ukraine steps up." Zelenskyy's face tightened, but he remained calm. "Mr. President, we are grateful for your support, but our resources are part of Ukraine's sovereignty," he replied, carefully choosing his words. "We cannot allow foreign influence to compromise our independence." The tension in the room was palpable, but neither side was ready to back down. Trump's eyes narrowed, his voice growing more forceful. "You're not in a position to dictate terms, Zelenskyy. You need us more than we need you." He stood up, pacing in front of the grand desk. "This isn't charity. It's a business deal." Zelenskyy, usually measured in his responses, shot back with a level of passion that startled even Trump's aides. "It's not a business deal, Mr. President. It's a matter of survival for my people," Zelenskyy said, his voice rising. "We're fighting for our very existence, and we need your help, not a takeover." A sudden silence fell over the room. For a moment, it seemed as if the world had stopped turning. Trump stared at the Ukrainian leader, his expression unreadable. Finally, he scoffed. "I didn't come here to play games, Zelenskyy. You wanted this meeting. Now you'll deal with the consequences." Zelenskyy remained unyielding. "My people have fought for freedom for generations. We will not sell our soul for a handshake. If you want to support Ukraine, then do it on our terms." The exchange had become personal. Trump's face turned crimson with anger, while Zelenskyy stood his ground, unwavering. For a brief moment, it seemed like the entire future of U.S.-Ukraine relations hung in the balance. Just as tensions reached their peak, an aide stepped in. The meeting was over. Zelenskyy, visibly frustrated, stood up to leave. He didn't shake Trump's hand. There were no smiles or polite farewells. It was a cold, abrupt departure. As the Ukrainian leader exited the White House, the world was left in shock. Reports flooded in, and analysts struggled to make sense of the chaos that had just unfolded. Trump, who had hoped for a major diplomatic victory, now found himself in the midst of a storm. The White House quickly issued a statement, downplaying the intensity of the meeting, but the damage was done. Zelenskyy had refused to bend, and Trump had failed to break him. Across the globe, reactions were swift. In Kiev, Zelenskyy's supporters hailed him as a hero, a leader who refused to bow to pressure and fought for Ukraine's sovereignty. Back in Washington, the Trump administration tried to spin the events, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio defending the president's position, claiming that Ukraine needed to understand the new geopolitical realities. But within the Democratic Party, the response was one of disbelief. "Trump's actions were reckless," said Senator Elizabeth Warren. "He has compromised Ukraine's future, and by doing so, he's compromised the future of Europe." Meanwhile, in Europe, leaders scrambled to reaffirm their support for Zelenskyy. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, French President Emmanuel Macron, and others issued statements of solidarity with Ukraine, stressing that the country's sovereignty was non-negotiable. Back in the U.S., tensions were rising. In Washington, Zelensky's abrupt departure from the meeting had gone viral. A video showing the Ukrainian ambassador's mortified reaction as Zelenskyy stormed out of the Oval Office quickly made the rounds on social media. The clip became a symbol of the unraveling diplomatic relations between the two nations. The fallout was far from over. In the days that followed, analysts predicted that the clash would have long-lasting effects. Would this be the breaking point in the U.S. Ukraine alliance? Or would cooler heads prevail, and both sides find a way to rebuild the fragile trust that had been damaged in one heated exchange? For now, only time would tell. But one thing was clear: the Trump-Zelenskyy meeting would go down as one of the most explosive moments in modern diplomatic history, a moment that shook the foundations of international relations and left the world wondering what would come next.